Hello and welcome to another episode of a Wicked Parley. I am your host, Justin, and the lovely co-host, Rose. It's been a while since we said that, huh? Just a little
Hello,
bit.
how you doing?
Yeah, hopefully we're all doing good. All doing good, right? Okay, yeah, so tonight we're going to be
Hopefully.
discussing mysteries and potentially some conspiracies. Honestly, we're gonna do a call-in show via Discord. So if you are interested in being a part of tonight's conversation, please join our Discord. Once you've joined Discord, join our lounge, and then you'll be queued up in more or less the order that's there. If there's some sort of debate, we can figure it out. Rose will more or less
Yes,
take the
I
reins
will
in that
be in
regard.
charge of that.
Yeah. All
Yes,
right.
I'll keep track of the Discord.
Yeah. Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Honestly, when it comes down to this, I know that sometimes people may see this like, in the future, and you might go, man, I really want to be part of that conversation. Well, lucky for you. Tonight's episode is a part two-parter episode. So there'll be one tonight, and then next Saturday will be something very similar. We'll be also discussing mysteries and conspiracies. So if you can't make this particular show, then next Saturday you'll have another opportunity. So hopefully you guys come check us out. And so, starting off tonight's, mysteries of sorts, I want to kind of discuss the Eye of Africa. It's an interesting little phenomenon that might be connected to Atlantis. Who knows? And we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit. But before we jump too much into it, Rose, do let me know if there's anyone in the Discord who wants to be part of the conversation.
I will let you know.
All right.
I will let you know.
Fantastic.
Keeping an eye out.
Fantastic.
Keeping an eye out.
An eye out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people have in recent years speculated that perhaps the Eye of the Sahara is connected in some way to Atlantis. It's also known as the Richat structure, but it's also, easier to just call it the Eye of Africa because it's like a really fantastic particular thing. And it was first kind of pointed out by some people who actually were on, of all things, Google Earth. And they were like, that looks kind of weird. That looks kind of like mysterious. That kind of lines up with this description. And people just kind of ran with it. I think there's a lot of evidence to kind of suggest that perhaps maybe there's something to it. But there's also a lot of evidence that kind of detracts from it as well. So, I'm going to kind of cover what I know about it. And if anyone knows anything about it, feel free to mention in the chat or jump in the Discord and let's talk about it. But what I do know is that the Richat structure, it was formed supposedly by scientists. They say that it was formed from a combination of a volcanic event, like essentially a volcano being stripped down to nothingness through erosion. And the spiral and stuff like that has to do with essentially wind patterns, and particularly the Sahara Desert buffeting the area. Now, I kind of call that bullshit. I'm gonna be 1,000%, and I call bullshit on it because there are massive salt deposits all around the area, and you may ask yourself, well, how the hell could there be salt deposits all around the area? Well, there's a lot of explanations for this, but to me, I think that the ocean, at one point or another, covered that area. And then got dragged across the surface. And as the ocean essentially was being, pulled back or stayed, it evaporated and left behind salt deposits. Kind of like the salt deposits that are found in North America, in the salt flats. So it's something I think similar probably happened. I also think that, the structure is intriguing. But I personally kind of don't believe that Atlantis is there. Primarily because, although the structure is very striking as descriptions, and artists can, of course, they're really fanciful about that. At the end of the day, there are no structures that have been found. There is no evidence of geological works in the area that I've heard of or seen. So, to me, I don't think the evidence is strong enough in that particular thing. If anything, I think Bimini Road is far more a likely candidate than the Richat structure, personally speaking. But that's just me. What do you think, Rose?
About whether or not Atlantis is real
Well,
and stuff like that.
Well, let's not talk about whether or not Atlantis is necessarily real, but just more like, what do you think about the reshot structure, the Eye of Africa?
I mean, it just looks too perfect.
It looks too perfect.
Like, I know that's kind of, it's just like almost a near, perfect, almost a near perfect circle, that sort of thing. So it's just like, was that man-made? Or is that natural? And if it was natural, what the heck is it? Type of scenario.
Okay, I gotta ask you. Okay, but here's one question I have for you, and it's not to be like pick your thing apart necessarily, but I gotta understand what process of human engineering that do we know of that could create that effect?
I'm not an engineer. I'm no engineer. I pay attention to my mathematics, which could be used for engineering, but like I don't pay attention to the actual engineer stuff itself.
Fair enough.
And besides, there's probably plenty of mad scientists.
Yeah, there are plenty of mad scientists out there. That's for sure.
Who knows?
Hey, backseat. What are you doing, man? You got any thoughts on this? Come join the Discord. Come talk to us.
He's working on it. He's actually waiting in the lounge, and he's like trying to pull up a conspiracy first and foremost. I told him to let me know when he's ready to join us.
Okay. All right. Well, let's shift lanes for a quick second here, and let's talk about cyber warfare. Now, there have been a series of conspiracy theorists out there that have speculated that there have been, secret wars launched in cyberspace against major military powers for at least the last 10 to 15 years. Do you think there's any credibility to that at all, Rose?
The existence of secret wars. I mean, I would think so, maybe, because, I'm tech savvy, but I'm not that tech savvy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm no hacker or anything, so I'm pretty sure it exists. I just don't know to what capacity,
Yeah.
Like, are they full on, it's a straight on war, or is it like somebody's just pulling the pigtails of another country?
Yeah, let me ask you just a general question, right? Let's say hypothetically you were a government power and you were intentionally trying to stunt the development of another nation's abilities to combat you or potentially develop dangerous and harmful technology. Would that be considered an act of war if you sabotaged that?
How big of a sabotage are we talking? Granted, any amount of sabotage would just seem annoying to me.
Okay, let me put it this way. Okay, like let's say hypothetically one country destroys a multi-million, potentially billion-dollar installation, setting back that country decades. Okay. Is that an act of war?
I mean, I'd consider it so, because you just set me back decades, and I'm only a human here.
Okay, so let me tell you about the Stuxnet virus. You tell me, is this an act of war or not, right? Backseat's like, yes, it would be.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would.
Yeah, I know, right?
Automatic.
So, like, the Stuxnet virus...
I'd consider it, yeah.
Yeah. So the Stuxnet virus, in a nutshell, was designed by the CIA, and they more or less put it in virtually everything. And they sent it into Iran's area, probably on thumb drives, all sorts of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It was undetectable, like at the time. And it's the whole purpose was that for that virus to find its way into a computer controlling Iranian nuclear programs, like their power grid, nuclear power plants, and it would exhaust the rods, and so you would basically have every about 13 to 15 days the rods would be completely destroyed, and so as such you'd have the situation play out where you'd be like, as the engineer, completely like, what the hell's going on? Why are the rods keep on being destroyed? Ultimately causing countless dollars in damage and potentially destroying the entire thing and setting back their entire nuclear program perhaps decades. that in a nutshell is a Stuxnet virus. Like, it's vastly more complicated than I'm explaining.
I mean, pretty sure. I did go check in on the lounge, and we have a conspiracy ready to go.
Fantastic. Let's hear it. Yeah, let's pull them in.
Hey, give me 1 second. Because I want to warn them ahead of time because, the stream is like 15 seconds.
Yeah. It's fine.
Alright. Yeah.
And while we're waiting on that...
Hello.
So
hello.
Who do we have?
It be the Chowder.
Chowder?
Hello, I'm Chowder, the third host of the Wicked Parley.
No. That's got to be a vote, sir. That's got to be a vote. So,
okay, then I am variety guest Chowder.
Variety guest Chowder. Okay, we can work something out. So, Mr. Chowder, what is the conspiracy or mystery you have to talk about?
That humans have already been cloned.
Humans have already been cloned. Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
That's the conspiracy they told me.
All right. So for me, just hearing that, I think, considering the fact that China just basically ignores human rights and everything like that, I would have to have already assumed that a place like that probably has already done it. And probably did it a long ass fucking time ago. But we're cloning sheep in 96. You gotta believe in 2006 someone's been cloned. I mean, you could make an I think you could argue that any person who is twins is also a biological clone. And so mothers have been making clones for longer than the technology to artificially do it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I would assume it's just, a step up from the, cloning of hearts and kidneys and livers and all that.
Yeah.
Yes, that is part of the conspiracy theory where the elites have cloned themselves and raised basically organ farms. And that, like, when via growing basically a new human, that they can just harvest organs for themselves to be perfect matches.
Interesting. I mean, that seems like that's like a Westworld thing, right? That's like something straight out of a movie and TV show, right? There was a whole thing about that.
I don't think it's Westworld, but I do believe that there was a movie like this.
Yeah, I feel like it was something like that. I don't know. I'm not 100%. Well, what's your take on it? I mean, you suggested it. Do you think it's real?
I think it's real. Or at least very, very feasible. That some crazy person that is very rich has tried to attempt this.
Okay.
/ has succeeded in this. Because...
Do you have any candidates that you think are like, oh, this person definitely did it?
I don't think any particular candidates, but I'm guessing it's somebody that is a front-facing, not a front-facing person, because they would be scrutinized to heck.
Sure.
Of everything they do, and they would have to be a relatively billionaire, basically.
Like a Putin type person.
Yeah, Putin type person.
Okay.
Could have done this.
Okay.
Or Xi Jinping could have high likelihood to have done this.
Well, I like how we're pulling from world perhaps nefarious individuals. What? Wait, we couldn't have a Joe Rogan type person? Could he possibly clone himself?
I mean, if Joe Rogan wasn't as front face of Joe Rogan, I think he could have done it.
Okay.
He could have been you know what? This is one of the weird things that I find interesting and would like to attempt.
You know what? Fair.
That's fair. I mean, Joe Rogan has been known to inject stem cells and all sorts of other, we'll call it questionable medical procedures. So, I mean, hey.
Just a couple of questionable things.
Yeah, could be. I mean, honestly, if you had the capacity to clone people, I mean, part of me would be well, we got DNA material for Elvis and Martin Luther King. What prevents, the cloning to start cloning people of the past that were important, or an Einstein.
This reminds me of a MTV cartoon called Clone High, where government
What?
agents stole DNA from people and like grew the like basically cloned them and make new humans, and they're all in high school.
Oh,
Our main
then.
protagonists are Gandhi, or sorry, it's Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, and Joan of Arc.
What the heck? Okay.
Yes,
Oh
it
my
was a
God.
very amusing show.
Well, I mean, that's a. Yeah, I mean, a
okay.
lot of those people are products of their own time, though. So, I mean, taking them out of their own time into the modern era probably would change them quite a bit, don't you think?
Yes, but
The immediate
I
culture
mean,
shock.
if you could, why not?
Yeah, you know what? That's
Why
fair.
not? Just because you can doesn't mean you should sometimes.
The greatest people of all time, and if we believe that people are born the way they are, like it is nature, not nurture, that they could be as great as they were in the past, slash as bad as they were in the past, depending
Oh
on
my
who you
goodness.
cloned.
Oh God. Oh well, I mean that opens up a can of worms. I appreciate the call, and if you want to throw another one at us, or just kind of discuss one we're
Yeah.
mentioning, feel free to join the thing again. Okay.
No problem.
Awesome. All right.
All
Well,
right.
well, Rose, do we have anybody else waiting?
Nobody else at the moment.
Nobody else waiting at the moment. Okay. Well, all right.
No.
Okay.
I believe Chowder. I created a new channel so that when people are ready, just hit me up on that channel and I will come and check in.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. Okay. Cool. All right. So the next thing I want to kind of discuss after we talked about like cyber warfare, which I feel like we kind of gleamed, you know, but
Just a wee bit.
But,
Just
I mean-
a tiny tad bit.
but if people are interested in it, we, of course, you guys can ask the question in the thing, and we can continue talking about it. But I'm gonna go on to something else. I want to talk about time travelers. Specifically, what I want to talk
my.
about when it comes to time travelers, I want to talk about the reality and is it even plausible in the first place? And I want to start by saying that I think time travel to the past isn't possible. I don't think it is for a lot of reasons, but I do think
Oh yeah.
time travel to the future might be. But what's your take on it?
Hmm. Because the whole time traveling to the past thing, if you did change it, wouldn't it just be a part of history? So nothing like really changed as far as you knew, and as far as you know, everything's how it's supposed to be, despite all the quotes time travel shenanigans.
Yeah, see, like that's the reason why I think travel to the past kind of like I feel like it opens up too many doors. Like I feel like if you did find a way to travel somehow to the past, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple
Yeah.
obstacles I feel like you would immediately run into. I think the first obstacle is the fact that if you travel to the past, right, then you're not like the Earth isn't in the same spot of space, that like like where you're at. So you'd have to find either some way of calculating, where the Earth is at a certain moment in time, and then jump to that moment in time. So that way the Earth and you are in the same place at the same time. Otherwise, you would go back in time, but no Earth, you'd be just like, ooh, vacuum of space. I don't think you're making it.
That sounds like something from a series of books that I read way long ago in the past about the Dragonburn series, I think.
No, yeah, how'd that go?
I don't know, dragon. It was essentially this one chick had a dragon and they discovered the ability to time travel. But they had to, like you mentioned, find an anchoring point, and their specific anchoring point was this one star that would always be in the exact same location, like every 20 years.
I mean,
So that was their anchoring point.
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, like, technically the Earth orbits around the Sun, and the Sun orbits around the center of the Milky Way galaxy somewhere between every about 22,000 years. So, like, I mean, like, if we're talking about physical locations, it's going to be longer than 20,000 years before, like sequences where you'd be able to go back. So, to me, personally, like, when I think about this, right, like, you have to overcome that part. But then, let's just say somehow you can overcome those parts. Say you have a spaceship that can do this time traveling thing, and you can just travel to the location because you know where the Earth's going to be. So it's not like it's too crazy, and it's not like it's terribly far away either. You know, it's like on a cosmic scale. It's it's not that. If you can travel in space and go through time, it's a jump over the pond. But the other issue is that if you were to interact with that time, the moment you do, you've created a splinter universe, I believe. I think that like you've left your universe.
Little multiverse theory right there.
Yeah, I think that would be an acceptable way of looking at the multiverse, and that our perception of time is simply one way that the universe is able to reflect on its own existence, and another way is through other universes splitting off from the ways in which matter is distributed at different points in time. And each one of those different distributions creates a sub-universe. You know.
Fair enough. Everybody has their own little butterfly effect. Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, but here's
for the future. I wouldn't know if I'd want that to be possible either.
Well, we know it is. Yeah, like the math is clearly shows that, like, yes, if you travel at a certain percentage of the speed of light in a fixed location, 100%, and then you were to travel backwards, you would be traveling in the future exponentially, equal to the amount of time spent traveling at that speed. So, like, that for sure is a real thing. They also know that if you stayed close to something that had an enormous gravitational effect, it also disturbs space-time, and would essentially change the entire way in which you would interact with the rest of the universe.
Oh, now I remember where I've heard something similar. It was in a game theory about Rosalina from Super Mario Galaxy.
Oh my god.
It was from one of those.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, do we have any people waiting?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay, then. All right. Well, this is probably going to be a short episode, then.
I'm still laughing at the picture that's currently on the screen about the new urban fantasy theory.
Oh, yeah. Pull that one up. All right. So, like, anyone ever, like, really wondered about vampires? Yeah,
Sometimes.
I've been more than once like, someone has, like, who has met me has claimed that I'm a vampire because, like, I don't really sleep very well. And I also, like, burn in the sun. But this particular little joke is super funny, and I thought explains vampires suspiciously correctly.
Yeah. Suspiciously?
Suspiciously.
Very suspiciously?
Correct. Yes, very suspiciously. So, let's go ahead and throw it up here, shall we?
Yep.
All right.
There we go.
Here it is.
Oh, I forgot that's what I named it under. New urban fantasy theory. Walmart hires vampires. This explains why it's open 24 hours a day, why working there is often described as soul-sucking, and why there's almost always no windows. Most damningly, Walmart is one of the few stores that specifically hires a greeter with no other job than to welcome every person into the store. Because vampires have to be invited in.
Wake up, America.
Wake up!
This is kind of funny though, because if you think about it, that's actually kind of like super accurate. I don't recall ever seeing a window in a Walmart like ever. Like there's like one small window, right, that's connected to the carts, but that doesn't really show on the inside. That's only for the cart area, of which case has yet another like divider point, and it completely blocks off the outside.
I will be right back, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, and so, like, to me at least, and the idea that, like, you have to, like, there's a greeter, like, that kind of, like, falls in line. I don't know. It kind of seems kind of sus. I'm not sure. I don't know. What do you guys think, chat? Let us know. All right. Looks like we're going to have a person coming in quickly here, so. Or not. Well, anyways, while we're figuring that particular thing out, what about werewolves? You think werewolves are real? I don't know. I mean,
maybe.
You think so? Maybe?
I mean, maybe that's what Bigfoot is.
You think Bigfoot's a werewolf? But some dude just goes out in the middle of the woods and just suddenly just like starts
maybe that's
around.
why you can't find him afterward, because he just turns back into a normal human.
This reminds me of like the Rampage game, where like if you damage somebody enough, they just turn back into a person and run off.
Bye. I mean, who knows? Supernatural be supernatural.
So do we have another?
Yes, we do. And I immediately facepalmed at this one.
I see. Okay, so who is the guest?
It is Chowder yet again.
Chowder. All right. I mean, I guess you are special host today, huh?
Special guest host. Hello.
I have returned.
Excellent.
Yes,
Excellent. What do we got for us?
That Disney created coronavirus so that the Marvel movies could basically catch up to the timeline. Because when a Marvel movie comes out, up until coronavirus, they were all that year. Like, oh, it is this year in time. But when Endgame happened, they jumped 5 years into the future. And so Disney was like, oh, we can't be like, oh, the next year is like 2020, but we're in the 2025 timeline. So they're like, we have to slow down production as much as possible. So Disney created the coronavirus that basically stopped the world for about 2.5 years. So they were getting closer and closer to, we are at the right time.
Okay, all right. I guess, okay. All right, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot to unpack. So, okay, so first of all, all right, I mean, that's a big claim. That's a big claim. How would you handle the fact that there's so much evidence to suggest that there was a leak, like the lab leak hypothesis, and the evidence of it being created by man? How would you say that? Like, what arm of Disney has access to, labs that could do anything like that? And considering the fact that the release method was in China, how would you say that they smuggled that into China?
I'm not saying they smuggled it into China. They could have made it in China because Disney as a corporation works literally across the world. And so they have the power, the funding, and the resources to basically do it anywhere they wanted.
Oh dear God.
They also have made a lot of influence.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know about that one. I mean that
about
one.
Which one?
I mean, like, all of that. I mean, like, first of all, like, Disney influence. I'd say that Disney used to have influence. I think it's a cultural icon, so naturally it has some modicum of influence. But I think influence, in the ways in which that I'm referring to, is more developmental on a psychological, like, perspective. Like, we know for a fact that, like, women's value of men is dictated on what a lot of people call the Disney princess, ideology. And we know that Disney promotes some rather questionable messages to various people that are young. However, just because they're willing to do something like that, Disney lost so much money over the coronavirus that if it was them, it was like a colossal backfire. I mean, they lost billions of dollars. They lost more money than they spent when they bought Star Wars.
I mean, sometimes plans backfire.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true.
Who knows? Maybe they didn't think it backfired this much. I don't know. It just sounds hilarious.
I mean, it's. I don't find it hilarious. I find it it hurts my head. It's like one of those things that when it's mentioned, it's like I think about it. And I'm like, okay, how would that be do? And then I'm forced.
There are too many hoops to jump through.
Yeah,
they almost fell at the first hoop.
Yeah, it's too many. There's too many logical fallacies involved in that particular hypothesis, in my particular opinion, that theory. It's to me, I don't see how it's advantageous. I don't think correcting a plot point in a story makes sense from a financial gain, especially considering the fact that Disney is more like they own public property. You know what I mean? Like Disney looks at it as, oh, we make movies, but that's not really what Disney's about. Disney owns land. Disney owns rights to icons and sells figures and toys and books. You know, like they're a multimedia empire that is catering to our culture. In the long and short of it, if I'm gonna be really like direct about it. And so, like, to me, I don't think the coronavirus did anything for their bottom line, and I don't think it could potentially have any intentions other than correcting a plot point that is inconvenient. Like, at least that's my take on it. And I also think this too. I think virtually every single Marvel movie since Endgame has been just shit, with the exception of really Thor and Spider-Man.
Well, damn, all right.
Yeah, and I think it's been shit because they've all been forced to be planned around that particular plot point, which I think kind of makes it predictable, like how the story goes. So, but that's a whole nother thing. So,
it's a whole nother ballgame.
You know, here's a great conspiracy, right? What if the Russo brothers were trying to end the superhero movies by constructing the demise of them? Like that's a real conspiracy right there. Like, what if they intentionally designed Endgame to be this ginormous, like, super, like, iconic moment that every movie afterwards would have to try to address in some way, and by so doing make the movies bad, which causes the entire hero franchise to flop and make them no longer advantageous to make, so that they can make other projects.
I mean, I could see it.
Yeah, I mean,
that to me,
Marvel movies have become an almost unstoppable machine.
I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, like, look at the box office numbers for like Thor, and like look at like Spider-Man, and look at like the Eternals, or like really any of them. You can, like, Spider-Man was a great success, not because it was a Spider-Man movie, but because it brought back old fan favorites into a big giant kind of like movie thing, and it kind of was the wrapping up the end of the whole Spider-Man story for the most part, right?
Yeah,
it was the end game of the Spidey universe, if you could think of it like that. That's why it did well, in my opinion. And I think that, like, you look at Thor is a great movie. I saw it, I loved it, but a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people don't like it, and it's not doing well. And Eternals, I'll be 1,000%. I saw Eternals recently on Disney Plus for free.
Eternals is not great.
It is. It might be. I want my time back. You know, I feel like I need to be paid for having to watch that trash.
Become a movie reviewer, then you.
I mean, it was so bad that that it really, like, it kind of highlights all the problems I have with the current MCU stuff. And I don't think it's because MCU is like becoming like old. I think that the stories, the writing is just trash. They need to bring back the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. I need to tell the good stories. None of this fucking bullshit around LGBTQ rights and all this other political crap that no one gives a shit about anyways. I want to see someone get punched in the face. I want a story that's good. I want to see someone fall in love, someone get their heart crushed. Like, I want to see this drama, damn it.
That was a turnaround.
I know, right?
Yes. There should be no more love. Only heart crushing.
Only heart crushing.
I don't want only heart crushing.
Sorry.
I want a balance.
Sorry. That just immediately made me think of a Tumblr quote about the heart crushing.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Don't break people's hearts. They've only got one. Break their bones. They've got like multiple.
Oh my god.
What? We've got like 206. Why not?
Okay, I'm just going to say this now, right? Like if you recognize the reality of how many times dudes get their heart crushed by women, like, it would be ridiculous. You'd be on like a dozen people's bones by the end of the year, like some dudes.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's a good idea or not. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, depends on the bone, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what? How about this, Chatter? Until we got someone else inside the Discord, you can go ahead and stay in.
Okay.
That way,
sure, thank you.
That way, Rose isn't jumping around, and I'm sure you'll have something to say. So.
But I like jumping around.
I'm sure you do, but, like, you know, you can keep an eye on it.
Jumping here,
Right.
jumping there, jumping everywhere.
Yeah.
Hopefully not jumping off a building though.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Okay. All right.
Only with a parachute or an air glider.
Okay. All right. Well,
Anyway.
here's another one that I kind of caught my attention when I was doing some research on this. It was actually the idea that there used to be an advanced civilization before ours.
Dun, 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 dun.
Now, I once a long time ago, well, actually more specifically, I first started watching the Joe Rogan podcast in 2017, so I'm going to say this now. The first guest he had that I saw was a guy named Graham Hancock. And Graham Hancock is an author that talks about this very subject. And he has kind of been criticized by a lot of people for his ideas, but he brings up some rather interesting things. I'm not sure it's 100% true, but it's definitely something that's worth taking a look at. And so, just on the surface, before I go into any details, what do you guys both think collectively about this particular subject?
I mean, I would have to assume that, like, some civilization existed, because there are some structures that we just can't frickin' explain sometimes.
Do you have, like, an example of one?
Not really. just because I don't know it doesn't mean that it probably doesn't exist.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
I don't know a lot about the world.
I'll bring up a few. What about you, Chatter?
I don't think it's a advanced civilization from Earth.
Okay, so alien hypothesis, huh?
Yeah, that is
Okay.
my thoughts of how ancient structures that we can't fathom got built.
Okay.
At least some of them.
All right. Well, let me. We'll circle back to that particular thing in a second. Let me tell you a little bit about some of the things that have been suggested by Mr. Graham Hancock. One of the things that he kind of talks about is the fact that a lot of world cultures speak about a group of people who are human, but they look different. They're lighter skinned, and they're known as the builders. They come, they talk, they teach about how to build structures, and then they leave. Multiple civilizations over the course of history have had this experience happen to them. And the interesting thing is that the things that they are said to build are all very, very, very similar. You know, if you look at the Romans literally talk about the builders, the people who taught them how to build roads. This is where Roman concrete eventually came from. These builders taught them this. The Egyptians also spoke of builders. Supposedly there are texts of Mesoamerican cultures. I always get them mixed up, so I'm not going to say a specific name. But I know that like one of the more ancient Mesoamerican cultures specifically spoke of builders as well. Mm-hmm. They also, a lot of global cultures that did not have any communication with each other, speak about certain events that happened at the same time. Like, for instance, you can't find a culture that doesn't have a great flood myth. Doesn't exist. Yeah, like any culture that dates back old enough to about 10,000 years ago, or has like some sort of like oral tradition that could date back to that particular period, all of them have a flood myth.
Well, all right.
Yeah. And so like you could argue that there's something kind of strange going on when everyone kind of has the same thing. But there's a counter argument to that too, because you could also say that the instance of why dragons are said by every culture, yet dragons have never existed, is linked to a primordial fear that we have psychologically. And it's connected to dangers that we would have found in our environment, such as snakes.
Danger noodles.
Danger noodles. So, you know.
Danger noodles with wings.
Yeah.
Angry sock with wings.
Yeah. That's another thing that's kind of interesting too when you think about it. Like a lot of cultures talked about flying things in the sky. Mm-hmm. You know, and yet, what thing in the ancient world would have been flying at the time? Anything?
Birds.
Well, I mean, like something that you could construct, you could build.
Gliders.
Okay, what culture used gliders?
So, I am from Cambodia, and
Okay.
so we had gliding technology, because we had so in the center of Cambodia, there's a giant temple that is almost like too big for humans to like actually like. It wasn't made for human size.
Okay.
Like a single step is the height of a human.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
They're like 6'5", like 7
Like,
feet tall.
Yes.
Wow.
Crike.
And so at the peak of there's a tower that they found a wood structure that kind of looked like a glider, not necessarily a glider, but
Wait,
people.
they found a wooden structure that was ancient.
Yes, but a wooden structure, as in a piece of like petrified wood in the shape of a glider that had like cloth that like you saw remnants of, that people would basically jump off the tower to get to certain places in the temple.
That.
Okay, all right. Like,
Okay.
First of all, I think that's fucking cool. Like that's
That
awesome.
is.
But I also have problems with it.
Huh.
Like when it comes down to it, like materials, for instance, woods, cloths. It's very, 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 very difficult to preserve them. For them to survive even a couple hundred years. If you think about how books, and like scrolls, and things like that have survived time periods, a lot of these books are practically dissolving. The Dead Sea Scrolls were literally put in jars and put in an environment inside a liquid that prevented them from being destroyed, which is the only reason why they survived for as long as they did. The reason why we theorize about like Woodhenge, for instance, is because none of the wood would have been able to survive. It would have broken down and dissolved into the earth. Same thing with virtually all cloths, because minus a very small number of very recent cloths, they're all more or less made of plants, and of course they decompose over time, even if they're dyed and treated and stuff like that. So what you're describing to me
is something a bit more modern.
Doesn't track with what I know about archaeology. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible. It could be. Maybe it was treated in a certain specific way. Maybe it was buried in a certain way that didn't have exposure to oxygen or something like that. I couldn't say because I don't know. But if it was exposed to any form of the elements, period, it for sure had a shelf life. And if it was going to be old enough for it to be considered like that, it would have to be at least several hundred, if not 1,000 years old. And the idea that something like that could exist in a complete way to be able to identify, even like imagine like just like a strand, to be able to identify that is very very rare. Not impossible, but exceedingly rare. This is not a normal thing. So to me, it sounds more modern. But I mean, okay, sure, gliders. I've heard of glider-based technology in a couple different cultures, actually. I've heard the Egyptians supposedly use something similar. I've heard of Mesoamerican cultures using something similar, and I've heard the Greeks use something similar. Now, nothing like what I'm thinking of, though, because I'm thinking of like the Vimanas from the Indian subcontinent, like texts. I'm referring to the flaming shields described by the Greeks and the ancient Jewish peoples. The Aromatic tribes that spoke of flaming shields in the sky. It's like, where does that come from? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, and like if you look at like some of like the texts in the Bible, like there's a show that used to appear. I don't know if it does anymore. I don't watch it. I always laughed at it too. I'm gonna make sure I'm very clear about this. But Ancient Aliens, like that, it was ridiculous. They talked about like a certain encounter by certain religious leaders that, like, for instance, like the burning bush in the Bible, for instance, said that perhaps maybe it was a UFO that had landed. But who knows about those particular things? But I think that ancient cultures, there is one piece of evidence, and considering the time, I'm gonna briefly mention this, and then we're gonna talk about it next week in more detail. But one of the evidences to this particular hypothesis that we didn't really get a chance to fully discuss, but we will, has to do with the fact that the pyramids and the entire Giza Plateau shows evidence of water, and especially the Sphinx shows large water deposits. Now, for people who don't know this, the last time that Africa, particularly the location in Egypt where the Sphinx exists, was wet enough to have rain, let alone the water that's being shown in the material surrounding the Sphinx, would have been about 8 to 10,000 years ago. Way older than any civilization we have documented living there. Which means that there is a potential that the Sphinx is many times older than the culture in which we attribute its creation to.
That sounds very plausible.
Yeah, and we can go more into it. There's a really fun article that I'm gonna put in the Discord. Actually, not Discord, in Patreon.
Patreon.
So if you guys want to join our Patreon, it's like $1, and it supports us. It really does. And
oh darn! I only have 99 cents.
I know, right? Jesus.
99 cents for a pound of spaghetti at Trader Joe's. Let's go.
Oh my God.
Well,
Wait, is that true?
Well, yeah, my dad and I bought like Trader Joe's spaghetti today for like 99 cents a pound.
It's like a bad rush to Trader Joe's. Just...
Well, that is my cue to leave.
I mean, Trader Joe's doesn't do the tax from what I remember, so it's just like the prices on the thing. So.
Yeah. I mean, okay. Well,
why are we advertising this for?
I know, right? On that note, if you guys want to see more content, come check out our Twitch, where we do live streams every Tuesday and sometimes Thursdays. I will be playing the Lego Star Wars game on Tuesday, so you can come check out the madness. If you want to see me struggle at Gundam Battle Assault 2, again, check out our Twitch. And if you're interested in more discussions surrounding conspiracies and mysteries, check us out next Saturday. With that being said, I want to appreciate the fact that Chowder came and spoke today. Thank you very much for being part of it.
Thank you. You have become a part of my life, and it is very fun.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's fun having you along.
Thank you.
All right. Well, as for everybody else, hope you guys enjoyed tonight's episode, and hope you guys look forward to the next episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Good night, everybody.